So what if everything you were ever taught about money was, well, wrong? Today we're jumping into Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad, Poor Dad. It's a book that basically takes all the usual financial advice and flips it right on its head. And it all starts with the totally different advice he got from two dads in his life.
Now, you look at these two phrases and they both sound like pretty solid advice, right? But think about it for a second. There is a world of difference between them. One path is about finding your place inside the system. The other is about owning the system. And that single idea, that shift in perspective, is what this is all about. Okay, so at the very heart of this story are these two major father figures in young Robert Kiyosaki's life. He had his own dad, a man he loved and respected, who he calls his poor dad. And then he had his best friend's father, who became his mentor, his rich dad. And having these two completely opposing worldviews basically forced him to stop, think, and choose his own path.
And here's the first thing that might surprise you. His poor dad was this brilliant, highly educated guy with a PhD. Meanwhile, Rich Dad never even made it past the 8th grade. Right away, that just shatters the idea that a fancy degree is the only ticket to being wealthy.
Their whole way of thinking was different, right down to their core beliefs about money itself. Poor Dad always said that the love of money was the root of all evil, that it was a corrupting force. But Rich Dad, he had the opposite view. He believed the lack of money was the real root of evil, the thing that caused all the stress and struggle.
And you see that same contrast in how they approached risk. Poor Dad's advice was all about fear. The fear of losing what you have. So his advice was play it safe. Rich Dad's advice came from a place of education. He wasn't saying go be reckless. He was saying get smart. Learn how to manage the risk so you're the one in control.
This one is a huge mental switch. Think about it. When you say, I can't afford it, your brain just shuts down. It's a dead end. But when you ask, okay, how can I afford it? Suddenly your brain has to get creative. It becomes a puzzle to solve. This was a massive lesson from Rich Dad. So how did this all start? Well, believe it or not, the whole journey began when the author was just a 9-year-old kid. He got left out of a beach house trip because his family wasn't as wealthy as his friends. And that feeling, it lit a fire under him. He decided right then and there he was going to get rich. And his first idea was pretty creative.
He and his best friend Mike decided they were literally going to make money. They went around the neighborhood collecting old lead toothpaste tubes. Yeah, they used to be made of lead. They melted them down over a little grill, poured the liquid metal into these plaster molds they made, and started cranking out their own nickels. Their ambition was definitely there, but their knowledge of federal law, not so much.
So after his dad had to gently explain that what they were doing was called, counterfeiting, he didn't crush their spirits. Instead, his poor dad said this. He praised their drive, their initiative. He told them they'd already done more than most adults ever do. And that encouragement is what pushed them to go find a real mentor.
So, taking his dad's advice, Robert went to Mike's dad, the Rich Dad, and asked him to teach them how to get rich. Rich Dad agreed, but his lessons weren't going to happen in a classroom. Oh no, they were going to be learned through experience. And the very first one, well, it was designed to be a painful one.
The deal sounded simple enough. The boys would work for him for 3 hours every Saturday, and in return, he would teach them his secrets. They jumped at the chance. But the reality of the work wasn't quite what they were dreaming of.
This was their pay, 10 cents an hour, for 3 hours of ridiculously boring work, dusting off canned goods in one of Rich Dad's stores. I mean, even for the 1950s, that was basically nothing. It was an insult.
You can just imagine it. After a few weeks of this, Robert was getting furious. He felt totally tricked and used. He was giving up his Saturday mornings, missing baseball games, and all for what? 30 cents and a lungful of dust? He was ready to quit.
So finally, he couldn't take it anymore. He stormed in to confront Rich Dad, demanding a raise, accusing him of breaking child labor laws, the whole 9 yards. He was done. But here's the thing. Rich Dad had been waiting for this exact moment. This was Rich Dad's reply. He didn't get angry. He didn't get defensive. He just smiled. And he told Robert that his complaints sounded exactly like the stuff most people say about their jobs for their entire lives. The lesson had already started.
And this is where Rich Dad drops the first major piece of wisdom. He says, look, life doesn't give you speeches. It just pushes you. And every single one of those pushes is life's way of saying, hey, wake up. There's something you need to learn here.
He explained that most people get stuck in what we call the rat race, and it's run by two emotions, fear and greed. It's a cycle. You're afraid of not having money, so you work hard. You get a paycheck, greed kicks in, you want more nice things. The bills go up, and the fear comes right back. It's a trap.
And this was the real turning point. Rich Dad told him, as long as you're blaming me, your boss, for your problems, you have no power. But the second you realize that you're the problem, well, then you can change yourself. You can learn something. You can actually solve it.
So, with all that anger now turned into genuine curiosity, Robert was finally ready for the real lesson, the one that would completely change how he saw the world of money forever. Defeated, but now totally engaged, the young boy asked the big question, if getting a raise or a better job isn't the real answer, then what is?
And Rich Dad's answer was so simple but so profound. He gently tapped Robert on the head. The solution wasn't outside of him. It wasn't about the job or the pay or the boss. It was about using his brain to see the opportunities that everyone else was too busy to notice.
And there it is. Lesson number 1. This is the big one. The poor and the middle class work for money. They trade their time for a paycheck. But the rich have their money work for them. They build and buy assets, things that put money in their pocket, whether they're actively working or not.
And just to really hammer this point home, Rich Dad made them a final, insane-sounding offer. Keep working the same hours, but for zero pay. The whole point was to break that mental connection between work and a paycheck. He wanted to force their brains to start looking for opportunities to make money instead of just waiting for someone to give it to them.
And that really leaves us with a pretty powerful question for ourselves, doesn't it? The next time you feel that push from life, that frustration with your job or your finances, are you going to blame your boss? Or are you going to stop and ask yourself, what is life trying to teach me right now?